Hi, I'm Claire Williamson, an ex-litigator and the co-founder of Leading Minds. With 97% of lawyers complaining that stress is impacting their health, I think it's time we speak about how challenging the pressures of the legal industry can be. So this podcast is a space where lawyers can discuss how they've overcome those challenges they face in their role and gone on to thrive within their career. So whether you're a trainee, a partner, or anyone in between, I really hope that this podcast will leave you feeling inspired, empowered, and with a confidence that you can leave your mark on the legal industry. So today I'm joined by Idin Sabahipour, a trainee at CMS and the founder of LittleLaw. So Idin's going to be sharing the journey of his commercial awareness platform LittleLaw and his experience in his role as a trainee at CMS. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Claire.
Thanks. I just thought I have been highly recommended to follow you quite a while ago on LinkedIn, and did so, and I've always loved kind of your content, and also was really interested with what you were doing at LittleLaw. So I really did want to have you on the podcast for quite a long time. So thank you so much for joining me today. I know that you're actually on holiday from your firm as well, so even more so, really kind of appreciate you taking the time to speak to me today.
Not at all. It's a pleasure to be on and talk about LittleLaw and whatever else I'm doing as well.
Amazing. So I thought it would be really interesting, firstly, just to get an introduction into your journey into the legal sector, and then we can maybe speak a little bit more about LittleLaw. But where did you study, and where did you, you've obviously kind of at a trainee at CMS at the moment, but tell us a little bit more about how that all came about.
Oh yeah, of course. So I started, I don't know if this definitely isn't the classic traditional route into law career. I started actually as an economics student.
Okay.
At uni. So I started in Nottingham studying economics, and I did economics for the best part of a year. And that was like, when you speak to some students or applicants in law firms, a lot of the times they know that from a young age they wanted to do law, and this is like kind of, that's what, when in a firm they ask why law, they have a good answer that stems years and years. For me, it was, I could have answered that for economics. I didn't have that for law. So when I started uni, I didn't really enjoy economics as a course. And then I looked into other things I could be studying instead, because I wanted to stay at uni and do my degree. And that's when I looked into law. I had some friends who were studying law at Nottingham as well. I spoke to them about it, looked into the course, and then swapped over to law, and then started again essentially the next year doing law at Nottingham. So that is kind of how I went into law as a degree, again starting from a very unconventional path, and didn't do any of the law A level, like the classic law A levels, like English or history or anything like that. And then from then on, I did my law degree at Nottingham. After that, I was doing applications all the while, not seeing any success from them. I got kind of like incrementally like further and further down the application process each year, but never got an offer for a vaccine or a training contract while at uni. And then I graduated in 2017, and between graduating and then getting my vaccine offers in 2019, I did a variety of things. I worked in different jobs within law and outside law, did some paralegaling, and then did some completely unrelated work in working in a restaurant or whatever. And as well as that, in that period, I did a foreign qualification as well in New York. And then in 2019, my applications went a little better. I got a couple of vacation schemes, and then from that got the training contract offers, which I'm now currently, as you mentioned, at CMS doing my training contract in my second seat.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think it's really interesting, isn't it? I think we all have this perception that there is one way, and you need to know when you're 6, and then you make all of your choices based on that, where you're aiming to. That must have been a really big decision, having stepped away from studying 1 year and then actually changing as well. That must have felt like quite a big deal.
Yeah, at the time I wasn't even thinking about the applications. I was just thinking about what to do. But yeah, I remember my family were kind of a bit surprised at my choice to leave, because from 6 years old, as you said, that economics, I had a brilliant idea. I'd looked into it as a kid. I was like, yeah, that looks cool. I'd like had an idea of what the best economics unis were. I was always had an interest in economics. I did it at A level. as I said, like I didn't do any of the classic law A levels, but I did the economics ones. I had economics, maths, physics. Those are my A levels. No essay subjects. And then from then on, I think at semester one, which was 13 weeks into uni, I basically decided that this wasn't really for me. The reasons are varied. Partly, I've only got myself to blame because a lot of the stuff that they did in the economics degree wasn't what I was expecting, and I think I probably could have found that out if I'd done a bit more research into it. I wasn't so like tunnel vision on this. But then I learned from my mistakes for the second time when I went into law, and I did a lot more research into what it was, what the modules were teaching, what the career prospects were, and things like that. And that's kind of made me a lot more satisfied in my next decision.
Yeah, retrospect's a great thing though, isn't it? I think a lot of my career was just kind of like stepping forward and like in retrospect, I think, what was I doing? How was I so naive about what I was kind of going into? But, you know, I think it's all part of the learning experience, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what it was for me as well.
Yeah, and so I'd love to know a little bit more about LittleLaw. Firstly, maybe an overview of what the platform is and then how it actually came about.
Sure. So LittleLaw is essentially now it's at one point it was, I would refer to it as basically a news website, but now it's more of a wider media organization which is tailored to getting news stories and making it more relatable and accessible for law students and aspiring lawyers. So essentially the thing that we started with was our LittleLaw reports. So these are 3-minute read time articles on our website, which take a piece of news and instead of just focusing on the detail and what's gone on specifically with this piece of news, there's a couple paragraphs that outline what's happened and then a section that talks about what are the wider effects and what are the general trends that you can take away from this piece of news. So what we're trying to do with that is to aim to build the commercial awareness of students and aspiring lawyers. Yeah. The dreaded buzzwords. We're trying to basically give a resource or a platform that people can use to develop their commercial awareness. Yeah. And it started with those written reports, and now we do a bunch of different stuff. We do some what we call our lowdowns, which are like really long guides on specific areas of employment and careers. We do some video content and stuff like that as well.
But you've got to tell the backstory because it's a really great backstory as to why this came about and how you actually started turning it into what it is today.
Yeah, okay. So the backstory is it kind of came about a bit by accident. And then, so it was back in 2015 when I was at uni. I was doing my applications, as I said, to law firms, and I was seeing mixed degrees of success. So I'd go to a lot of the grad recruitment events, and I'd ask the grad recruitment of each of the firms, or at least someone would ask in each one, what is the main problem that you see with applicants? What's the main difference between a successful applicant and a very good applicant who isn't successful? Because it's very competitive, and we're all aware that there's good applicants who don't get through. So what is that missing element between those two different groups? And they said that we get a lot of good applicants, people who have good grades, be it at A level or at uni or whatever, and they have good extracurriculars like sports, societies, all this stuff, and they seem like very rounded people, but the one thing that they're lacking is commercial awareness. So I was kind of stuck on this, thinking, what is this? I haven't learnt this. I thought kind of you do well in your GCSEs, you do well in your A-levels, you do well in your degree, and then you end up in a job. But now I'm being told that there's other elements that
was
being
a shocker
assessed
for
on.
me as well. I was like, what? But everyone always says legal sector is guaranteed a job. Isn't that why we're all here? No.
Exactly. So I knew nothing about I wasn't commercially aware.
Yeah.
I've tried to not use that word because it's kind of confusing. I didn't really know what was going on in the wider world of business and how different things would affect, have different pushes and pulls on a macro scale. I have a quick
question for you to interrupt there.
Yeah,
for anyone that doesn't, what would your definition of commercial awareness be, do you think?
That's a good one. So I'd say it probably depends on the context.
In the context we're speaking about it in terms of, assisting people to get,
So for me, what I try to talk about when I talk about commercial awareness is that when you read a piece of news, I think it's important to understand, first of all, what's going on, which is just usually just spelled out in black and white in the article. Second of all, think about internally, for example, if it's a transaction, think about what are the factors that are in the heads of the people who are involved in this deal. So imagine Google is acquiring Fitbit, which is a deal that I use as an example because I read about it a couple of months ago, but I don't know how that's progressed. But if you're in that boardroom at Google, what are you thinking about? Why is this good? Why is this bad? And vice versa, if you're in the boardroom at Fitbit, why would this help you? Why wouldn't this help you? And that stuff's not necessarily going to be in like the BBC article. So you might have to look into more specific tech websites or see the basically the reasons why this is a good thing or a bad thing. Basically, what other factors are in play. So I'd say step one is read the article, get an understanding of what's going on. Step two is put yourself in the shoes of the people who are involved in this. And I've just given a transaction as an example, but it can be anything. It can be a dispute. Just put yourself in their shoes and think about what factors are important. And then finally, which I think this is the bit that makes it very, very, makes this definition very specific to law students and applicants, is to think how a law firm could get involved. So to think, where would a law firm fit into this transaction? What would they be helping with? Or in our case, in this example, it was a transaction. You could have corporate lawyers helping out. You could have maybe employment issues or IP issues. Maybe there's some litigation that Fitbit was party to that they need some advice on. So that's how I would define it. Those three steps. Firstly, understand what's going on. Secondly, put yourself in the position of the parties involved. And then thirdly, think how a law firm could get involved.
Amazing, thanks. Sorry, I didn't want to kind of interrupt your story there, but I just thought we were bandying about this term quite a lot, and some people actually, it's almost like such a buzzword that you don't even think you need to know what it means anymore.
Yeah.
So I thought actually it might at this point be worth thinking that. So yeah, so you were saying obviously, you know, one thing that L&D and graduate recruitment were saying was that actually what we want is people to have commercial awareness, and this is the kind of missing link. As we spoke about, you know, as well, I think the academic credentials are very much almost a given in the legal sector, so it's not quite enough. So you kind of went away with that, and then
so this 3-step thing that I said, I had no idea about any of that at the time. So this is just obviously years of thinking about it and like chatting to the team and trying to like write our articles in a more commercial awareness developy way. But at the time I was like, what is this? People would tell me what you need to do is basically read the news, read the FT, read BBC Business. And I would do that. I would do that with, again, like I'd read an FT article and I'd learn a lot about like whatever's in this article. And I'd feel like I'd have a fairly good grasp of this very, very narrow thing. Maybe it could be something in like fluctuations in oil prices. I've read about what's happened this week and I feel like, okay, I understand this snapshot of this event. But I didn't feel that from that I understood any wider, more abstracted lesson that I could apply more widely. So I felt like if I went into an interview or something and I was asked to talk about this, or I had free reign to talk about a topic, maybe I'd be okay. But otherwise, if a question was thrown at me, there wasn't a lot of lessons I learned from just reading that FT article that I could apply more widely. So that quickly became my the issue that I found in the resources that I was being told to read. That there's a lot of information there, but in terms of what I thought commercial awareness was at the time, which was just generally having a wider understanding of how the business world works, I didn't feel like that was serving that. So that's when I started to write summaries, news summaries, just to help myself remember it, and also to really try to drag out any big picture effects or wider issues that comes out of each story. So what I would do is I'd write a story, a headline, I'd literally get a pad just like this I have here, and I'd any story I'd read, I'd write the headline, I'd write a couple lines of what's going on, which would basically condense the whole article into 2 or 3 sentences, and then I'd do a final paragraph called what's the big picture effect, or why should law firms care? And that's why I'd really force myself to read more widely about this. Maybe sometimes law firms have written their opinions on a particular story, which is super helpful to see what their opinions are, and then talk about really focus on what the big picture effect is of this story and why law firms care. So I started writing those summaries just for myself and for my own practice. And then a few of my friends saw them. They were quite interested in reading them. And that's when the idea came to me to like hack together a little website and stick them on LittleLaw 1.0 at the time, like a very, very basic website.
What did that look like?
It looked quite cool, actually. I showed it to a few people and they said it looks unfinished, because it was just like, I went for a very minimalist design. It was just white, one LittleLaw logo. The logo is still the same. There was little, there was a subheading under the logo that said something like bite-sized commercial awareness updates for law students. We've dropped that. Now the slogan is battling commercial unawareness.
Oh, I like that. That's
we thought that was cool.
Did you come up with that?
So the story of who came up with that is a bit of a mystery.
Are you going to take full credit whilst you're the only person having the discussion?
No. I went back to one of the documents that we had worked on a few months back, and then basically saw it written there. And there was another guy at LittleLaw at the time who I messaged being like, Matt, did you come up with this line? It's battling commercial awareness. And at the time it was just me and him, and he's like, no, I didn't come up with that. So I think maybe I did, but I don't remember. And at the time I didn't think anything of it. I'm going to take credit for it. But he said it wasn't him. But yeah, I found it in like an old thing where we were like just basically banding around ideas. But yeah, we're running with it now.
So obviously from its humble beginnings, it's moved on a lot. And I know now you have a lot of people kind of contributing. And how did it actually go from, you know, being yourself and then your uni friends? How did it start going to like the audience it's got now? Was it through social media platforms, or where did that come from? So
I was at the Uni of Nottingham, as I said, and after I made that very basic website, I spoke to my friend who is my friend Anna, who is the president of the University Law Society. So I asked her, could you just, if you think this is cool, is there something that you could promote in the society? And they had like a mailing list of a few thousand people. So she said, yeah, that looks cool. So I wrote an email, sent it to her. She just forwarded that to the students at uni. So that was the first 2,000 or 3,000 readers just came immediately, like overnight, from that one promotion from Uni of Nottingham, which was really helpful. And then that kind of gave me the option to reach out to people. It gave me a pool of people who I knew were interested in this that I could reach out to and then ask for them to help with writing content, and eventually it's grown. That's how it kind of snowballed into it. But it was all social media. Now we've got a bunch of different unis that are represented. We've got brand ambassadors at over 20 unis now. And they're really all brilliant, spreading the word about LittleLaw and just getting new signups, and it's growing year on year. So that's kind of how it started. But since then, it's been mostly social media. We had on-campus brand ambassadors, but it kind of aligned with like the first lockdowns last year. So we quickly made that into all digital, and it's not really hindered us, I don't think, at all.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. And in terms of, you know, it's phenomenal seeing people do such great things in the legal sphere, and especially, you know, people who are aspiring lawyers. Did you find that that was something you spoke about often during your training contract interviews?
Spoke about LittleLaw.
The fact that you had LittleLaw, yeah, sorry, I missed out like the key bit there, didn't I?
No. I just want to make sure. So yeah, I did. I did it when I thought it was appropriate. It was sometimes well received, sometimes not very well received. So I'll give, in most of the firms, they were quite interested in it. I spoke about how it came about, the skills I'd learned from being part of it and working with the team completely remotely for years. And like, I think I've learned a hell of a lot from doing it. So yeah, I would speak about it because I genuinely do think there's a lot I've learned from doing it, both starting it, writing it, and now I've got a much more hands-off role. I don't write the report so much. I just help oversee basically what's going on.
Yeah.
And we have a bunch of talented reporters who write the brilliant reports on the website.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I ask that is because I think that it's so easy, I think, especially as an aspiring lawyer, when you're looking at people doing things like this, thinking, oh my goodness, unless I've got this like social media network and brand of myself, whether that's like a web page or a blog or an Instagram platform that is all about, you know, your life in law, that I've got no chance of getting a training contract. So it was really interesting hearing you say that actually sometimes it wasn't as well received as you would have anticipated.
Yeah.
Why was that? Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah. So I thought that the firms would like to hear about this. One firm, I've happened a couple of times, but one really sticks in my mind when I spoke about it. They saw it as a distraction, effectively. They said that what you're doing is, they didn't tell me at the time, they nodded along and smiled at the time, but in my feedback, it was very clear.
Oh, that's even
so
worse, like you're going like more and more into it.
Yeah.
Like...
I was like, oh yeah, they'll be impressed. But no, they didn't like it. They said it shows that you've got your mind on other things and you don't want to it'll probably distract you during the training contract, which I don't think it has. My training contract so far has gone. I didn't go to that firm, didn't offer me a training contract, but yeah, I don't think it has necessarily. But yeah, they didn't see it as a positive necessarily.
Yeah, I think that's really probably reassuring for a number of people as well, because it goes back to that thing of the firm that's right for you will really be the one that all facets of your personality and what things you've got going on, that will kind of come together. Because I always, when I speak to people, do say, you know, is a two-way interview process, that it's easy, I think, as an aspiring lawyer, you think, well, it's just about me and what I'm kind of, you know, selling myself. But actually the firm as well, you know, you have to kind of weigh up, is that actually probably the right place for you? Maybe not, if this is something you're really passionate about. So yeah, I just wanted to delve into that a little bit, because I think it can be a bit of a tricky one, and it can be really intimidating as well, can't it? Thinking, God, not only do I need the academic qualifications, I also need to be, you know, captain of the netball team. I also need to be in the Law Society and this established brand doing something innovative in the legal sphere to even have a chance.
Yeah, no, not at all. I don't think that's this is like the base thing. I think, but yeah, for me, it was just something that I was spending. It was an interest of mine, pretty generally, to make websites. I've been doing that separately, like doing website design and development kind of as a separate thing. So this was just an opportunity where my interests kind of married together, and I had some time at uni. It wasn't necessarily something I did with the intention of selling it in law firm interviews.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing as well, because I think the people that I've seen, you know, having interviewed on the podcast, doing really interesting, inspiring things, they often did do it as it was something that felt it came naturally to them. I think if you ever try and do something that you're kind of doing it because you feel you should, it doesn't really have the same outcome, does it?
Yeah, and it would be difficult to maintain, because while like we try and make our output look as appealing and polished as possible, there are still challenges with running it, with being part of it, balancing everything. So if I wouldn't recommend it as solely as a way to sell yourself at an interview. I think there's a lot to take on, and yeah, I wouldn't say that would be an efficient use of time at all.
Yeah, I would completely agree. Instead, spend more time reading LittleLaw than trying to
exactly.
LittleLaw. So in terms of commercial awareness, do you have any tips for individuals when it comes to gaining commercial awareness? Because obviously we've spoken about LittleLaw and that being a really great platform, but what about anything else? Is there anything else that's came about in your experience that you felt, actually, that helped me start developing it in a really real way?
Yeah, so I think I'd come back to that kind of 3 steps structure that I spoke about, which when we're talking about commercial awareness at universities and workshops, we call it the 3 L's, which stands for looking in, looking out, and law firm involvement, and I'll come on to each of them in a second.
I definitely said the 3 hells initially.
No, not the 3 L's.
We had to, oh, where's this going?
The 3 L, we had to match it with LittleLaw in any way we could, so we just forced L's
there you
somehow
go.
into there.
I like it. I see what you got there.
Yeah, so I think I would say that developing commercial awareness, you have to have a degree of kind of critical thinking, and then also there's just some extra legwork to do after you read a particular article. I would never say that reading LittleLaw is the like the complete solution. I think what we do at LittleLaw is very useful. We present a lot of different current events and news stories in a digestible way, so you can build quite a wide base of understanding of what's going on, and then we try and extract that wider picture. However, I would say that you should still probably do follow-up reading on, especially on stories that interest you. But yeah, coming on to those 3 Ls and how I think, how I currently I think is the best way to develop commercial awareness is that basically if you take all 3 of these Ls, looking in, looking out, and law firm involvement as basically step 1 to step 2, step 3. I would say step 0, so before you even start this, would be just to read a news story from wherever you get your news. And then if you want to develop the commercial awareness or pull out those commercial awareness insights, step 1, I'd say, is to do what we call looking in, which is what I spoke about earlier. Put yourself in the position of the people involved, or if there isn't anyone named, it's just companies. Imagine you're like one of the executives of one of these companies. Why are you doing this sort of thing? So ask yourself that, and then try and answer those questions. Generally, for me, it's further reading. I usually can't just conjure the answers up from my head. But over time, it does get easier to see what the motivations are for particular transactions or events that you're reading about. So that's looking in. Secondly is looking out, and that is when you want to look at basically what is being indicated more widely in terms of global shifts, macroeconomic shifts, and again to take that out of this this intangible wording and put it into a much more practical sense. Personally, I use pestle analysis, which is, if anyone hasn't heard of that, just Google pestle analysis, and there's a lot of good summaries out there when you look at political, economic, legal, social, technological, environmental. I think I got them all. These sorts of factors. So reading the story, what are the impacts on those wider, more macro categories? And then the 3rd L, so first we had looking in, secondly we had looking out, thirdly is law firm involvement. And then you just bring it back to a law firm and see which type of firm would be involved in this. Maybe you could even name the firms that you think would be involved in this. If it's an insurance case, maybe insurance specialist firms. What sort of work would they be doing? How would they be advising it? And going through that process, which becomes easier over time. At first, it will be a lot of further reading and stuff. But going through that process is how I think is the best way to develop your commercial awareness.
Yeah. And it sounds, I think, when it's kind of said in this way, like quite an investment of time. But do you think naturally it becomes more, or would you recommend people pick a few areas that they find they're particularly interested in? Because like you said, you know, the kind of Amazon taking over like Fitbit, that sounds quite interesting to me. Oil prices, even though I'm from Aberdeen, not so much. So do you find naturally, if there's an area that you feel more drawn towards, it's much easier, and that's maybe what you should, whilst also having a well-rounded, because you can be asked anything. Have you got any insight with that?
Yeah, so I would say definitely start with things you're interested in, because it is, for me at least, when trying to really understand this sort of stuff, at first, it did require just reading around a bit more. And I found, like, for example, I'd read about that Fitbit acquisition on, I think, just BBC News, BBC Business. And then if I read about it, like a press statement from Fitbit's website, a press statement from Google's website, or like some sort of tech specialist news online magazine, that I'd get a lot of perspective and I'd get a lot more understanding. So that's kind of how I developed it. As you said, it takes ages. So if it's something you're interested in, I'd say that's the most important thing. Because you'll just be motivated to read it, otherwise you'd get super bored. But from that, the whole point is, at least what we're trying to do with LittleLaw, is that there are elements you can abstract from it, and they'll just become generally like you'll build those models in your head as to what the motivations are for a firm acquiring X, or what the challenges are, what the potential issues are, and hopefully that sort of stuff can be quite general in your head, and you can apply them more widely when you get to them in case studies or whatever.
The thing that stands out for me as well is that I don't think this is necessarily just something that's useful in terms of actually gaining a traineeship or a vacation scheme or, you know, anything. I think actually by doing this, it helps you actually get more of an understanding of the different ways that law firms are involved, so that when you are moved about in your different seats, because you know, I'm sure you found this as well, you're in one seat and then you move to the next one, it's like starting a new job completely all over again. So it's almost like by having that that kind of thought process, you can start to see how it all works, you know, works together, and gives you, you know, a much more well-rounded understanding of the legal sector, to help you as well identify maybe which bits feel really interesting to you, because it's not going to necessarily be all of them.
Yeah, of course. No, I think I agree. In my first seat as well, these sorts of skills came in quite handy, because I was asked to basically, as part of the service that we're providing to one of the clients, just keep on top of any news and information that was happening in their industry, and then basically write a summary email to them to basically just let them know if they hadn't caught on to these things that have happened.
You must have been like, nailed this.
Yeah, I'm ready for this. Exactly.
Sorry, that did just make me laugh. I actually had to do that in 2 of my seats as well, so it's definitely something that's not uncommon, but I was just thinking how that must have been when they gave you that task and you're like, yeah, I could do that. No
Yeah, I've been training for this for years.
Exactly. Thank you so much for your time telling us a bit more about LittleLaw. It's definitely something that I think, you know, anyone who is, whether they are an aspiring lawyer or in the legal sector as well as a trainee or forward in their career, definitely go and have a look at, because I think you'll take so much from the website. I always finish off with 3 questions. So the first thing I wanted to know was, you know, Leading Minds is all about resilience. So what does resilience mean to you in the legal sector?
Resilience in the legal sector. So I would say that from my experience in the training contract, I definitely had a very tough time of it at first. And I found it very difficult, especially starting from kind of remotely. I went in a bit, but mostly remotely. I think the importance of resilience can't be overstated. And I think it's a lot of my ability to kind of get past those difficult times was born in the people I had around me. And sometimes you do need to lean on other people. And at first, when we started, I had a lot of the trainees that started with me who weren't having the same issues as me. They were loving it, and in those conversations, I found it quite challenging to be part of those, because everyone's like, "Oh, I did this, I loved it. I did this, I loved it." And while I was loving the work, I just generally found it very difficult. But I did speak to some people, an associate in my team, and then another trainee as well, who has started with me, about it, and that really helped me a lot, and they helped me see the perspectives, get a wider perspective, and really understand that what I was going through wasn't necessarily unique, and some of the things that I thought were like big disasters weren't as bad as I thought, and it really helped me a lot. So in terms of resilience, I'd say the importance can't be overstated. It's really important, but having people around you who can help keep you afloat when things are challenging is really important.
Yeah, definitely. And thanks for sharing that as well. I do think that, you know, we are, you know, I remember as well feeling very reluctant to, or I'd be like looking at other people and thinking, how come they're fine? This is really hard, whatever element it was. So thank you for sharing that, because I think that sometimes it's a bit unsaid, and because we don't see anybody else. You know, of course, it's difficult transition. It's entering the corporate environment often for the first time, especially, you know, for many people whilst doing so remotely, but often we feel like everyone else is fine, I can't say anything. So thank you for sharing that so openly. That ties into my second question, which is, what would your number 1 tip for finding sustainable success in the legal sector be? It's a big one.
Number 1 tip for finding sustainable success in the legal sector. I'd say the one thing that I try to do, again, I'm trying to do it more, so I wouldn't say I'm not the embodiment of this piece of advice, but I'm trying to live by it, is to engage with a lot more. get involved as much as I can. So there's a lot of presentations where as a trainee you're invited in to sit in, and at first I would just sit in and basically absorb, which was valuable in itself. But since trying to be more engaged and maybe ask questions wherever I could, or ask if I could help with any follow-up work, I've found that that's been very well received. If I could if I could do something that I'd never done before and just send it to someone to review before it goes out, even if I wasn't asked to do it. If I asked to do it, a lot of the times I say yes. In presentations, I try to come up with questions to ask, even if I don't end up asking them because I end up answering them. It helps me be more engaged and more alert. So I'd say engaging a lot more. So if it's a presentation, in terms of practical skill tips, if it's a presentation that you're in, stay engaged and try and come up with 2 or 3 questions that you can ask. And if they've not been answered, do ask them. If it's a client call, take a note. And if there's work to be done, do ask if you can have a go at it, even if it's something that you've not been asked to do. And that's helped me get a lot more experience and get a lot more value out of the things that I have been involved in.
Yeah, that's really insightful. That's really great. Kind of showing initiative and being more engaged with what's going on is really great. Thank you. And my final question is, who inspires you in the legal sector?
Who inspires me in the legal sector? That's a very good question. That's a tough one. So for me, there are people I can't put it down to one individual. I think
you can do a few. It's fine.
Sorry.
A general group of people is fine as well.
Yeah, no. To be honest, it's. I didn't really know anyone in the at least commercial legal world until I joined, other than a few of my mates at uni who got training contracts earlier than me. But I didn't really go into it with an idea of with people around me who I knew to be doing this for a long time. In terms of inspiration, someone who inspired me, I had one person who does actually come to mind. A man called Tony Bunker, who was who did give me experience in commercial law. As I said, I didn't really know anyone, and this is someone who allowed me to come to the firm, work at the firm that he was at, which was at Bowen Leighton Paisner at the time, which has since changed. But yeah, I was working there for a few weeks, and ever since then, he has always helped me with giving me experience on whatever he could do. So he was a big inspiration for me, and yeah, I think without that small insight into the world of law, I think I'd have a lot of difficulty to get there, because, as I said, it was something that was completely unfamiliar with me. Yeah. And even still starting, I think it's very hard to be completely familiar with it until you're actually there, especially if you're just not aware of this world. But I think he did give me some insight, which made me feel a little more comfortable doing the applications and interviews and things like that.
Yeah. I think often people as well are really reluctant to ask anyone for help because they think we're going to bother them, or that they're too busy. And I think it's the other way. When you ask people, they're really flattered that you took the time and thought of them. So I always kind of really encourage people, whatever, if people aren't able to, they won't be able to, but being able to kind of, take the initiative, ask the question, ask for any support or guidance that you need can actually be a real great thing as an individual to be able to give to someone as well. So yeah, that's really great to hear that he did that for you.
Yeah, no, that was really invaluable. And as you said, I agree with that. I think a lot of the people I speak to are more willing to help than people from the outside would imagine they are.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And yeah, that's my experience as well.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today and tell me a little bit more about LittleLaw, and finally explaining to me what commercial awareness actually means.
Thanks so much, Fair. Yeah, I'm learning as well as I go along, but that's the best I've got so far, but it might change in the future.
Yeah, I always cringe and think I have no idea what I must have said in my interview, but it got me. So, you know, who knows? It must have been enough in that moment in time. But thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today. And I would really encourage everyone, you know, no matter what stage you are in your career, to have a look at your platform, because I think it's really great. And also for everyone that's on the podcast today, please do go onto our website, leadingmindsglobal.com/podcast, and subscribe, and you will receive the new episodes straight to your inbox. And also follow us on LinkedIn as well, where we share daily tips and inspiration as how to find sustainable success in the legal sector. So thank you for joining me today.